Poštovani gledalci, dobrodošli u još jedno izdanje emisije Granice Istoka. Ja sam Harun Karčić. Ukrajina i Rusija suočavaju se sa realnošću dugotrajnog sukoba velikih razmjera. Ukrajinski plan pobjede imao je za cilj preokrenuti situaciju osiguravanjem dodatne vojne podrške Zapada i pokretanjem protuofanzive koja bi potisnula ruske snage na ključnim tačkama. Međutim, ovaj plan naišao je na značajne prepreke jer, iako je Ukrajina primila milijarde dolara vrijedne vojne pomoći od zapadnih zemalja, te iste države su postavile ograničenja za upotrebu oružja i ne dozvoljavaju upotrebu istog protiv meta unutar Rusije. Američki i NATO vojni vrh čvrstog je stava da se treba vojno podržati Ukrajina koliko god je potrebno. U nastavku emisije analiziramo stavove NATO generala po pitanju vojne pomoći Ukrajini. Naš prvi gost je general Matthew Van Wagenen, zamjenik šefa za operacije pri vrhovnoj komandi savezničkih snaga za Europu, odnosno SHAPE. General Matthew, hello and welcome to the Al Jazeera Balkans channel, and thank you so much once again for taking time to speak to us. Now, I wanted to start by asking you, we have been discussing a lot about the war in Ukraine, and I wanted to ask you, how has NATO's provision of advanced air defense systems to Ukraine, such as Patriots and NASAMS, impacted the balance of power in the conflict, and what further air support do you see NATO providing to assist Ukraine in defending its airspace against Russian missiles and drones?
First of all, I think it's the nations, the allied nations under NATO, have contributed greatly to probably saving the Ukraine over the last 2.5 years by their contributions of much of their national defense treasure, particularly air defense, anti-tank missiles, armored fighting vehicles. But it's going to get a lot tougher. The Ukraine needs more. They need more assistance. They're going to need more assistance from NATO and from the allies and from partners. The fact of the matter is the industrial base across Europe, across the United States is challenged, I think probably to meet the demands not only to build the capabilities that the alliance needs for self-defense, but also of what we need to provide for the Ukraine as far as lethal aid. So there's many challenges ahead here.
Now, earlier this year, President Biden approved, the transfer of ATACMS missiles for use against Russian targets inside Ukrainian territory. Why is there still a lot of resistance to use these weapons and attack Russia proper areas from where Russia bombs Ukrainian cities and towns?
Yeah. So let me be clear here. I'm a NATO officer. I work for the alliance. These are national sovereign decisions. The people that have provided long-range strike, the nations know who they are. They're France, they're the UK, the United States. Those are sovereign decisions. They are looked at through many lenses. I'm sure that the issue being escalation. As an alliance, though, we have to respect the decisions of the nations that have agreed to provide the aid, but the limitations they put on it. And I don't think it would be for the alliance to dictate national sovereign policy on this.
Let me ask you something about the use of drones. We have seen this spike in the use of drones on both sides in the war in Ukraine, both for reconnaissance and combat purposes. How are you at NATO analyzing the effectiveness of these drones in Ukraine, and what lessons are you using for future warfare?
I can tell you, the alliance, Allied Command Operations, we're looking at what's going on on the battlefields of Ukraine every day. What have the Ukrainians been successful with? What are the Russians doing? Lots of lessons. If you want to talk about the use of autonomous vehicles, particularly drones, what we've got to make sure here is what is a lesson learned and what is, maybe not for a longer period of time. So I think nobody would doubt that drone warfare is part of modern warfare now, but how big of a role will it play in the future? And I think we just got to be careful, because if you start talking about massive investment and stuff, and then you find out there's a counter to that in 3 years, because this was a weapon at the time, there's danger in that. What have we learned in the war with the Ukraine? One is, and the most serious aspect is attrition warfare, large-scale warfare, that we thought maybe was something that was gone, has returned. You know, and then how do you prepare for large-scale combat operations? How do you build the armies and the multi-domain capabilities you would need to do this? That's what we're learning right now. And I think the biggest lesson learned is, as much as we wanted large-scale warfare and attrition warfare to go away, it's not, and it's here to stay. And there's that's a lesson learned in itself, and that affects everything we'll do, is particularly in collective defense in the alliance.
Right. That was exactly my next question. We talk about this war as being being sort of high tech and the use of drones and AI, but there's still lots of trenches, lots of tanks, lots of artillery. Are we in some sort of transition from traditional war, quote unquote, to modern warfare?
I think it's best said, I think, by retired General Mathis, we're somewhere between World War I and World War III when it comes to technology. Not that we're fighting World War III right now. It's everything from trench warfare to the use of the most high-tech electronic warfare. Space is involved in this to some aspect, obviously. And that is going to drive of how we look at collective defense in NATO. And it's driving how we've built the first defensive plans for Europe since 1989. It's driving our command and control of how we set it up and how it's being employed right now. The conflict's driving this. It's modernizing the alliance, because we have no choice now, because we have got to be able to have the most credible deterrence we can. So if Russia looks at the cost calculus, it's not worth ever to try to get any piece of NATO territory.
We've been here over the last 2 years that this war, this invasion of Ukraine, has reinvigorated the transatlantic alliance. It's stronger than ever. Each individual member state is allocating far more for its defense spending. Do you see NATO as consolidating its current territory, or do you think NATO should continue to expand and include new member states?
Well, I mean, we went through the largest expansion NATO's went through probably since the early 2000s, with Finland and Sweden joining the alliance. 3 years ago, if I would have told you that Finland and Sweden would join the alliance, I think you would have looked at me and laughed. That's a large enough expansion right now. Certainly, there's other nations that are partners that have roadmaps out there that want to be part of the alliance. These are largely political decisions, but right now we're consolidating the largest growth. As the Finns love to tell us, we have a security provider in Finland, but we also have another 1,000 kilometers of eastern flank. But it was a great, it's wonderful that Sweden and Finland have joined the alliance as we consolidate really the high north, and we build the plans up there to protect and deter.
Right. General, it was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you once again for your time.
Okay.
Prije 20 godina NATO je uspostavio novu komandu koja se zove Allied Command Transformation i bazirana je u Norfolku u Virginiji. Njihov cilj je da razvijaju strategije modernog ratovanja, pretežno u domenima kibernetike i svemira, ali i naprednih autonomnih sistema. Njihov drugi čovjek je general Chris Badia, sa kojim sam nedavno razgovarao u Sarajevu. General Badia, hello and welcome to the Al Jazeera Balkans. General, thank you once again for taking time to do this interview. Now, I wanted to start by asking you, given these tectonic shifts in global security, how is NATO's Allied Command Transformation adapting to these rising threats posed by Russia and China? What are your priorities at this moment?
First of all, thank you very much for having me. And the question you're asking, it's vested within the real task, one of the main tasks our headquarter has, because this is also looking into the future. So with all the unrest and all the uncertainty going on in the world right now, we have that in sight, but besides that, we're looking out 2030, 2040, 2050, because one of our tasks is understanding already what might be the challenge of the future. How does the battlefield look in the future? Which technologies we are having in the future? Having said, of course, we're looking towards Russia and towards China, but you have to look at all the challenges you might face, including things like climate change or migration. And then, because if the military is asked as one instrument of power in order to help and engage, you have to have a full understanding what it is. So how do we prepare with that? Of course, we analyze from there, and then we see what technical trends are out there. I give you one simple example how we do that. Okay, right now everybody might still think, well, the main battle tank is a capability and a capacity of today, which it is. But if you see the digitalization of the battlefield, the ranges you have, in 20, 30 years' time, you still will have some battle tanks, but you need a lot of more long-range weaponry artillery systems. So just to give you a bit of an example how things are changing, and then this is a military example, of course. It's not the one or the other country, it's always the capability you need, whatever the challenges you might face.
So we're in a transition from what could be a World War I to a World War III, essentially. Yeah. Now, we've seen quite a number of sabotage and cyber attacks on Allied territory, from the Balkans to the Baltics. We're talking about drones flying over critical infrastructure, cyber attacks, hacker attacks, and so on and so forth. What steps is NATO taking to counter these Russian hybrid warfare tactics, particularly in Eastern Europe?
Also there, just to explain it in a bit of a broader sense, because I'm coming from what you just said, from World War I to a possible World War III. Do not be mistaken what we see in the Ukraine. A lot of lessons identified, lessons learned, very valuable. We take them into all our thoughts, but the alliance, as NATO, we would, of course, approach a conflict like that one and go to war in a total different way. Just to make that statement, right, and a clear understanding that we would do a lot of things different. And now it comes, why? Because, and this comes also to hybrid threat, cyber attacks and all those things, we think the war in 5 domains. We have classic, everybody understands air, land and sea, and everybody understands what the capabilities are there, but there are 2 more and they are so important, it's cyber and space. And only if you think those 5 interconnected and really globally, what space gives you on extra capabilities when it comes to information sharing, when it comes to reconnaissance issues, and then the cyberspace and the cyber domain. Really understanding, and from there, then you create a picture and then you create measures to go against. And this is where I come back. This is why we always would fight within the domains as a whole, look for all the synergies, and this is how we approach it, and this is how we get, at the end of the day, the advantage.
Now, in what ways is ACT working to ensure that NATO forces maintain a technological edge over adversaries such as China, which is investing huge amounts of money in high-end military technology, and making significant advancements in areas such as space and quantum computing? You just mentioned the Space Force. I know that the United States has recently established a Space Force. The UK has done so as well.
The NATO and we, in the military strategic commands, we're setting a framework. The nations provide the capabilities at the end of the day, but we coordinate with the nations and for the nations, setting the standards, explaining what's being needed so that there is a clear path forward in what's being needed, how we're going to do that. So at the end of the day, it's really the nation then that comes back and the nation that procures certain capabilities. Having said that, if you just look at the Washington summit, there are a lot of statements, what the mission, the task is in what we do, but there's also one very, very important statement agreed by all heads of state. You only can do that if you have a very competent, competitive defense industry. And this is where we come in, because you need to share a lot of ideas. Industry needs to understand, we need to understand the industry. You need to come up with standards. You need to create this space where nations, where the military of the nations and industry really come close together, fully understand what it is. And this is what we foster. For instance, we do a lot of exercises where we bring in the industry as well. It's this working together and trying early on what's possible or finding out what would be a better capability for the future.
now speaking of the cyber domain, and if cyber warfare becomes somewhat more entrenched in the future, do you think NATO should even preemptively initiate cyber attacks against its adversaries or not?
Well, first of all, NATO is a defensive alliance.
Right.
So this is paramount.
That's clear.
Okay. But nevertheless, and this you have heard the Secretary General making that statement very often, a cyber incident, a cyber attack, very well could provoke an Article 5.
Yes.
So with that, now you can imagine, as we go with those two new domains, number one, and this is also a NATO task, you need to understand the problem. So you need to see what is approaching you, what are we doing, and you have to provide it for 32 nations. This is, for instance, why in the cyber domain, NATO came up with a situational awareness center, if I may explain it this way. So really providing already advice to the nations, seeing what it is, observing the cyberspace, knowing early on for early warning, and having a good sense of what's happening. Number two is, once you have understood the problem, now you go in really the forensics and look what was it, how has it been done, and at the same time developing mechanisms in order to defend you better, because it's always the interesting thing is what you don't know. And this is where we get better every day. This is how we share it. And then it's on the nation to decide, and you know that it's a nation's response. When it comes to cyber attacks, still we are discussing it, but we leave it up to the nation how they respond when it comes to active measures.
Right. Now, you're a fighter pilot, and the U.S. Air Force recently celebrated the 50 years of the F-16 prototype, which was first flown as one of their, exactly 50 years ago. And one of their commanders remarked that the last pilot to fly the F-16 has not been born yet. And I was wondering, in this time of drone advancements and all that, will we transit from manned to unmanned aerial vehicles soon or not?
Well, first of all, we have a transfer already. You see that how many unmanned aerial vehicles are already being used, and it's not black and white. Mm-hmm. This is and there are. If you go back 10 years ago, a lot of people would have told you technology matters and technology is everything, and we had the next new generation fighter type aircraft. And if you look also by statistics, every 20 years, the cost of a new fighter is about tenfold. So the question already is if it's more technical aspect, how far can you go and what can you afford? Number two is, the latest conflicts also have shown us that mass matters again. So you need more. And now you need to be in the position to really afford that. So I'm coming back, it's not black and white, it's the mix. So you will always, and I'm convinced, to a certain extent you will have manned aircraft, but to a great extent you will have unmanned aircraft, and this is also where we, and with a lot of laboratories and industry, it's already there, but we're searching a lot, this manned-unmanned teaming.
Okay.
So how to foresee that you have an aircraft that's more or less then used as a command center, flying command center, and having a lot of drones with it, commanding those drones, and this is where you generate the extra effect, where mass matters. So this will be the way forward, and we will see how we go. But I fully agree, pilots will play a role in the near and mid-future, definitely, and being a pilot, I would say you will always need them.
Right. Now, in an early interview I came across, you mentioned that NATO must be, quote, a multi-domain by design. So how is NATO integrating these new domains that you earlier mentioned, space and cyber, with traditional like land, sea, and air?
What it is being military, you always seek your advantage, because at the end of the day, everything is about winning.
Right.
This is what we are there for. We have to win whatever crisis, challenge, or war there might be. And like I said, if you would make the mistake and think only the three domains, air, land, and sea, you would jump short. Because, as I said, space and cyber give you such a great advantage when it comes to information dominance. So now spreading the information, having the information at the right level, having the information in a secure way at the right level. And then it comes to decision dominance. Once you have all the information, you go for decisions. And then you need to be faster than whoever you meet on the battlefield or wherever. And then you can escalate whatever you want to do with that. And you only can do that if you are multi-domain by design. But let me also explain that. It's even a step further because we're talking also resilience a lot. And if you talk civil and military resilience and those layers of resilience, multi-domain also gives you the chance you orchestrate your own military domains and you synchronize with the civil domains. And then you get an even broader and better picture, again, being faster, being better in decisions, and at the end of the day, winning.
And finally, as this geopolitical landscape evolves, how are you at NATO ACT ensuring that at your member states, forces remain interoperable, especially when you deal with diverse threats across numerous regions, and this is quite a big alliance. And how do you make sure that you're not overstretched?
Well, first of all, it's a challenge that we are 32 allied nations within NATO. So one of the main tasks NATO really fulfills is this harmonization, standardization, interoperability piece. So we are the ones who early on create standards where the nations and the industry follows, because this is exactly what it is. You have to have the same code on communications, how you transfer data, and all those things. So this is where NATO is one of the main tasks, and we're following that. And not only for our 32 allied members, now we also have 35 partners. Right. So this and the partnership in itself is another value, and there you see how you create a big community and the community follows that. And if you go back to the Afghanistan conflict, there were forces from Australia, there were forces from all other nations, and they followed already a certain standard. So when you meet on the battlefield, you are already using the same standard.
Yes.
Seamless transition, this is exactly what it is, and this is what one of our main tasks is, ensuring that future conflicts can be then really set up in a positive way in order to win.
Right. General, it's a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you much for having me.
Sa izborom novog predsjednika SAD-a, mnogo toga će utjecati na nivo diplomatske i vojne podrške Ukrajini. Rusija je spremna voditi dug, iscrpljujući rat protiv Ukrajine i ne razmišlja o mirovnim pregovorima. Ali Kijev želi okončati rat što prije i osloboditi svoju teritoriju, jer je svjestan da bez kontinuirane zapadne pomoći ne može postići prednost u ovom ratu. Poštovani gledaoci, bilo je to sve u ovom izdanju emisije Granice Istoka. Ako ste propustili bilo koji dio, emisiju možete pregledati na našem web portalu balkans.aljazeera.net. Hvala na pažnji.